I mean, I've always felt, or we've always felt, such a huge responsibility to give back from a business perspective, to give back to the communities that we serve. So a really great, example is for Net-A-Porter, we have these vans where we do a same-day delivery in certain cities around the world. And the dream was always, okay, we're delivering beautiful clothes to discerning, wonderful customers. But then the vans come back empty, right? And could there be a way that we could use those vans for the greater good?
Who do you work with?
So we worked with a charity in the U.S. called Good Plus at one time, where we were collecting from customers lightly used or unused children's clothing, toys, accessories the parents might need, call it a baby carrier or things like this. So when you get your delivery from the van, and then you might say, well, guess what? My kid has just outgrown their toddler bed or what have you, and then we would collect that in our vans and then bring it back to the charity, which really was great. And during COVID, we were able to use the deepest, darkest moments of lockdown to use some of our vehicles for food delivery, things of that nature. I think with clothes, and I think the awareness is so much greater now, and I see this wonderfully in my kids and their generation, this notion of clothing not just having a second life but a third life. And so on the one hand, there's industry around that. Okay, you can rent things, you can buy things secondhand if you want something designer and you can't afford it. Okay, great, and it democratizes fashion. But I think the other thing that's wonderful is there's so much. It's not wonderful that there's so much excess, but the excess can be put to good use. These wonderful organizations like Dress for Success, which work with women,
I've met them.
And it's fabulous.
Tell us about Dress for Success.
Well, we've worked with them in the past, where they're bringing women back into the workforce, and so they're women who have either come out of very hard domestic situations, women who've come out of prison, and they come and they're doing these interviews and they're trying to get back into society, and they don't have anything to wear. They don't have lipstick to wear, or whatever. They don't have a pair of shoes that are decent. They might have an old pair of sneakers, and so it's Dress for Success. It's they have these outposts where essentially you could go in, you're given interview training, but also how do you show up? What's the appropriate thing to wear? And then there's a wardrobe that you can choose from, and it really sets you up. And so I think there's so many ways that one can get involved. And in London, there's so many friends who are doing great car boot sales and things of this nature, just as a way, because if you're in a privileged position where you have not only enough, but you've got too much, what can you do with it to help someone else, or to sort of help, even in a small way, try and tackle these gargantuan problems?
And Net-A-Porter, tell me more about Net-A-Porter. Tell me when did you start working?
So I started 18 years ago. And it wasn't a startup.
When did it start? When did it?
It's going to be 25 in June.
Okay, so 7 years into.
7 years in. A remarkable business, a remarkable founder, a remarkable team. And I remember, I had been there. It was a newsletter that had launched in the 90s called Daily Candy. I don't know if you remember this. And I remember, and it was all things sort of what's going on in fashion, what's going on with restaurants, what's going on with culture. And I remember I was in New York, and seeing this email saying there's this website that's going to be selling fashion. And I remember signing up immediately, thinking, God, what could be better? I always loved fashion, this idea, could you get stuff delivered to I remember the very first thing that I bought, which I still have, which is this Chloe satin drop waist dress. I haven't worn it probably for a long time, but it still sits there. It's this wonderful memento. And, the mission was really to make this fashion consumer's life easier and to also inspire her. And so what we've seen firsthand, and what I feel so privileged, is not just to work with super teams and really amazing individuals, but really just to see the joy that fashion can bring. Again, you're not solving the world's problems, but it really can put a spring in your step, just like you see here every second of the day. People sit down and whatever troubles they had or whatever they've got going on, they take a bite and you see the shoulders come down and this spark in their eyes. And it's that thing. And I think one of the beautiful things, this might sound crazy, but I think one of the beautiful things about e-commerce too is that, the transaction is separated from the receipt of goods, meaning.
What do you mean?
Meaning, so if you're in a store, which is, by the way, I'm all for stores, and they're great, but you're paying for something and then you walk away with the thing. Whereas actually, if you're buying online, you pay for it. By the time it arrives at your door, you sort of forgot that you paid for it, which is why over the years I've had so many wonderful people say to me, I love ordering because I feel like I'm getting a present.
Yeah. And also the way you wrap it, the way it arrives is very celebratory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you started working there, and then what was the trajectory for being
So I stayed.
a woman
So I
who
started.
started?
So I started working there, running sales and marketing, and then I started running Net-A-Porter in its entirety. We then launched a number of other businesses: the Outnet, which is a discount business; Mr. Porter, which was a men's business. And over the 18 years, was involved in those launches with great teams. And then I started running Net-A-Porter and Mr. Porter. And then I ran Net-A-Porter, Mr. Porter, and the Outnet. And then we merged with an Italian business called YOOX, and then I ran all 4 stores.
So how many people
and then
were you,
when I joined, we were probably about 100, 150 people. And today we're 2,500 and change. And there's been different ownership and everything along the way. So I feel like I've worn lots of different hats under the same
And what
roof.
what does it feel like to be a woman who is in this position? I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like. But is it something that you are thinking about other women? Are you thinking about your own kids? Is it thinking about the future now? What we've achieved, what we have to do. I mean, especially in this world right now that we're here, where there seems to be so much backward
going on
rather than
Yeah. I think as a woman, first of all, I had a couple of great role models. My mom, as I said, was, she's not just a working woman, but I think she really taught me indirectly that being a mom and being a working woman and having a successful career are not mutually exclusive. I also had at my school in New York this phenomenal headmistress named Mildred Berenson, who would stand at a podium. She was amazing. She would stand at a podium, our little lectern, when we had our assemblies, and she was always immaculately dressed, and she wore these little pumps. I think they must have been those Ferragamo pumps with the bows. Yeah. And she had this habit of just sort of clicking her heels together. And I remember she would be sort of immaculate, clicking her Ferragamo pumps. And she'd say, because it was a girls' school I went to, and she'd say, "Girls can do anything. One day a woman will be president." And as a kid, I mean, I barely was paying attention. I'm sure I thought it was washing over me. But it was interesting because when I eventually went to a co-ed school, I never for a second thought I was lesser of anything by being a girl. So I think it did kind of sink in. And then as I, started a career and advanced in a career, the question that I get from younger women all the time is, how do you well, not even like how do you do it because you're so great, but just how do you do all these things? Can you do all these things? And I remember reading something in one of the supplements here, and I can't remember, it might have been Nigella Lawson who said it, which was around it was something around prioritization. And I think that piece had said, you can have an active social life, you can have all these things, you can't necessarily have them all on full volume at the same time. But what I took away was this priority piece. And the thing that I believe in so strongly is just you need to know what your priorities are. You don't have to justify them to anybody, but know what they are, and then your answer will always sit comfortably with you. So for me, I always knew it was my family. For someone else, it might be their career. That's their choice. But then okay, it's this thing and it's that thing, and so you have to. Okay, sometimes you have no choice, right? But in the instances where you can make it, and I think. The other piece of advice I would always give is just set your stall out early on.
What does that mean?
Meaning you're starting a job. Let's say I'm coming to work for you, and I've just had lucky me if I were, and I'm coming to work for you, and I've just had a baby, and there are only certain hours I can do. Instead of, or I need to make sure I'm out of, in a restaurant's probably not the best example, but I'm running the shop, and instead of being embarrassed about it, instead of looking at my watch and stressing out, I would say to you, "Hey, Ruthie, I'd really love to come and, work with you, but every day I need to make sure that my bag is packed at 6 p.m. because I have a child." And then you can choose whether you hire me or not. But just lay it out. Just lay out the ways in which you work and sort of what works. Anyway, and just being upfront about it.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the conversation, please click the subscribe button. There you will see more videos on my YouTube channel. We'll also be posting new content that you can only find here. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Ruthie's Table 4 in partnership with Montclair.